And the first game today will be by Bruno. And Bruno was playing against Bruno Wilbert. He was playing against Agostinho Arruda. So Bruno, also thank you for your support. You weren't in the list right now because this is like a one-time thing, but that's also appreciated, of course. So thank you. So let's begin, shall we? Let's begin, my friends. I'm excited. I love these streams. So as you can probably tell. So let's start. Bruno with the white pieces. It's going d4. And here, just as an option, Bruno, you can go for the French, as you probably know, by playing e4. It's just another alternative. But okay, you can also stay in your familiar waters, I guess, play c4. And now g3, d5, and we have Catalan. Bishop b4 check, knight bd2, d takes c4, and now castle. And I looked at this briefly. I think a3 is a worthy alternative here. Okay, if the bishop retreats here, you can just take on c4, and if the bishop takes, then bishop takes, and you have gotten the bishop pair and a quite valuable dark squared bishop, especially since those squares are already weakened. And yes, maybe black can cling on to the pawn, play b5, but I think you will definitely have some difficulties on the dark squares. So I think a3 is a worthy alternative at this point. Castle is of course very natural and I think also quite decent, but maybe a3 was a tick better even. c3, and here knight c4. I think knight c4 is good, but once again, maybe even better is to take and then play rook b1. The point is that the rook is covering the b4 square, not allowing the bishop to retreat, and this bishop feels a little bit uneasy sometimes, and black can't really take on d4. I mean, he could, but now not the bishop would feel uneasy, but the king on e8 not able to castle anymore because the bishop is covering the f8 square. And white has a beautiful lead in development, can maybe follow with something queen c2, knight c4, knight coming to d6 possibly, and black is really, really struggling here. So probably after rook b1, black has to do something else. But it seems difficult for black to keep this bishop. Let's say castle. You could, for example, go bishop a3 now, or go knight c4, and this bishop just seems out of place. And again, if black goes like bishop a5, you could take it, swap it off, or play bishop a3 first. Because I think in this position, if you get the dark squared bishop, it's worth a lot. It magnifies your compensation. So I believe that b takes c3 followed by rook b1 would have posed more problems to black, but even so, you have very nice compensation here. Now, Bruno, you play queen b3. And that's a natural move, developing the queen. But I think it would have been better to not attack the bishop, because the bishop on b4, it's vulnerable anyway. It has to move at some point anyway. So why provoke it to move? I would try to go for e4. Obviously right now it's not possible because the knight is covering the square. So what you can do is play queen d3 or queen c2, preparing e4, preparing to gain space. And I think that would be the most natural way to proceed here. And then you can think where you put the rooks, d1, c1, b1. But to me, playing e4 makes the most sense here. e4, e5, gaining more space and restricting black's options. Because after queen b3, bishop e7, I'm not too sure how good that queen, how well that queen is placed on b3. Oh, and you're in the chat, Wilbert. Yeah, I should have recognized you actually. Wilbert Hoven, glad to see you. Kevin, I'm sorry. I see you said you sent me a game. Ooh, I must have missed it. I must have missed it. I'm sorry, Kevin. Okay. So sorry, Kevin. I have to do your game next time because I probably could pull it off now, but then I don't have it analyzed before, and I want to give you, well, full analysis and not like a quick look. So sorry. Okay, Wilbert. Oh, Bruno. Sorry. Bruno. Yeah, like you said, you played knight c4 very quickly, and that is common to just play the first move that looks good and comes to mind. It's very common, right? Knight c4 looks good. You don't want to take on c3, black wins another tempo, but then you need to ask yourself what happens next. So taking your time is important, but of course to a degree, right? You don't want to spend too much time on obvious moves either. So back to his position, bishop e7. Now rook fd1, I think it's fine. Knight bd7, knight fe5 I like. Queen c7, but here your next move I did not like. It's not a bad move. It's just it goes against my understanding of chess, or I guess one of the rules of thumb I learned, and that is don't exchange pieces if you're having a space advantage. And here clearly you have a space advantage. You have more space. You're controlling everything up to the 5th rank. So you played knight takes c7, and by that you exchange a piece, and you also help black to develop his bishop, right? So don't help your opponent, okay? That's not necessary. So why is that rule? Why should you not exchange pieces if you have more material? Of course, it's a rule of thumb, but in most situations I see it apply. Well, it's very simple. If you have more space, that means your opponent has less space, and that means he has less space to maneuver for his pieces. And sometimes pieces, your opponent would like to put 2 pieces on the same square as here. Put the bishop and the knight on d7, but obviously that's not possible in chess. So the pieces are kind of hindering each other, and if we're taking off material, then the piece can move more freely of the opponent, and that will make his job easier. So with that being said, what could you play here? Well, just keep the tension, play rook c1. That's a very natural move to bring the last piece into a game, develop the last piece. Or play e4, that's another move, but I'm not sure if you have to play this yet. I would just go rook ac1. Just go rook ac1. And you don't have to be afraid about black taking here on e5. You take back with the pawn, and you can maybe enter on d6. Maybe you can play bishop a3, exchange the bishop. Then there's a beautiful square on d6. Looks great. So knight takes c7, while obviously not blundering anything, it feels like it's just helping the opponent. Now rook ac1. Again, also e4 is an option, but rook ac1 is natural enough. Rook ac8. Now you go for this e4. Very well. Queen b8. And now you play knight e5. But I think it feels more natural to just win more space. Play e5 and then go after the dark squares. Exchange this bishop on e7, which is an important guard of the square on d6, and then you have a beautiful entry square for your knight. So that seems a more forceful way to play. Obviously a black position is very solid, but also quite passive, and you can potentially increase the pressure on the b and c file, and with a knight on d6 you have a very good chance. So probably black has to go c5 here, and then you could take on c5 and still play knight d6, and it looks uncomfortable for black. Maybe black can save himself, but it looks uncomfortable. By the way, you could also go bishop a3 immediately. That's probably doesn't make a big difference. Probably black has to go c5 as well. Alright, let's keep going. Knight e5, rook fd8, queen f3. Yeah, you see here, it's not that easy to continue to play. Right, black's very solid. And how to break through. You play bishop h3 with some interesting ideas here to go with d5, potentially, in some cases. Also some sacrificing ideas. Okay, rook c4, doubling on the c file. Knight d7. Now you play a very interesting idea, which I quite liked, keeping the pressure on. Of course, you could retreat, play knight d3. Again, this theme, keeping pieces on the board, right? But d5 I find very interesting and makes it quite difficult for your opponent to defend. So I think that's a good choice. Knight b6, and now the exchange sacrifice, d takes e6, f6, knight g4, knight takes c4, rook takes c4, and you have a lot of pieces in the attack. Your pawn e6 is powerful, so this is making the black defensive task quite difficult, and he goes astray right away, plays bishop e7, after which black is losing. Now you completely correctly play e5 to be able to swing the rook over and put more pressure on the black king position. Now f5, but here, that was another critical moment. I think if you spend some more time here, you'll immediately find the right blow. You play queen takes f5, but that allows your opponent to bring his piece back into the game with tempo and to untangle himself a little bit and to get counterplay. But if you look at this position, there's just a move that just comes to mind. Knight f6. Just crushing black. Okay, black pretty much has to take. If he goes king h8, you can go rook h4. You have all the pieces in attack. It's not surprising that white is completely winning here. And after takes, yes, e takes f6 wins. Okay. E takes f6 wins, and I mean that's already enough. Even stronger is bishop takes f5, but okay, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter how you win, right? I think e takes f6 plus 5, bishop takes f5 is plus 8. It doesn't matter. So if you look at this position, can't be a surprise that black's just completely busted, with the two bishops ready to swing into action, with the rook ready to come into attack, with the black queen on b8 being blocked by the rook on c7. So this is game over. So I don't know exactly what happened at this moment, but maybe you played too quickly. I don't know, maybe you just didn't look at this move. And so that's the takeaway here. That's definitely a takeaway. Just look at your options. And I emphasized that so much in the last stream already, but it comes up again and again and again. It's not like some moves are... The reason why we miss moves is simply because we're not looking for them, right? If you hold on for one moment here and just ask yourself, what other options do I have besides queen takes f5? Then your mind automatically will look at checks. And there are only two checks in the position. It's knight h6 and there's knight f6. And once you have seen this move, of course you will do some calculation, but very soon also your gut feeling will tell you, your intuition will tell you, this is crushing. It's got to be winning, right? So I think what is so important is to just train your mind to look for alternatives, to be open to look for alternatives and not be just, okay, I see this one move, I win a pawn, and then I stop there, but keep going. And look for other moves. So queen takes, bishop g6, queen f4. Now your opponent could have gathered some really good counterplay, rook d1 check, queen d8, which makes sense, right? Bringing the queen back into a game. But he misses that, plays b5. Now you can cover the first rank. Now rook f8, and now your opponent is provoking you. And now you spot it. Now you spot it, knight f6, and that's just crushing. Knight f6, very nice. King h8, bishop f5, exchanging the defender. And from here on, you just cruise to victory. The attack just goes through. Bishop f7, black has to take, and it's already down a piece here, so the rest is simple. Just making sure not blundering the rook. And now, okay, it's a matter of taste here. I don't know if I were to play like this, but it doesn't matter, right? You're just converting into a one pawn game, and here your opponent resign. So overall, I think a very beautiful game with the attack crushing through with this very nice exchange sacrifice, but also some nice takeaways here. As you can imagine, the most important, I think, was this knight f6 check earlier, right? You played it later, and that was great, but earlier you had a chance, and I think that was the greatest takeaway from this game. And maybe in general, also you said with the knight c4 move you played too quickly, maybe just keep looking for other moves. What else is in the position? Like I said, if we keep looking, we'll find, right? There's the saying, who searches, how's it going in English? Who searches will find, probably something like that, right? And it's simple. You just look for candidate moves, and that is moves that take something, moves that check, and moves that threaten something, maybe the opponent's queen. So all moves that kind of lead to a forced reaction. If you give a check, your opponent has to react to a check. If you take a piece of his, in most cases, he will need to take back that piece. And if you threaten his queen or a rook, then he has to react to this threat as well. So you look at those moves, just glance at them, go over them briefly, scan the position, and maybe some of them will catch your attention, and be guided by your intuition which moves you will analyze longer and on which you will spend more time. And then I think that could already be a big improvement. So Bruno, I hope this game analysis helped, and thank you for sending it in.